This episode is brought to you by the Pelora Group.
We forget that we can revisit a successful moment at any time. And mid-year, or rather summer, is a great time to do just that. Many of us, like myself, are drowning in self-betterment. How can I do more? How can I be better? And sometimes the confidence that you need and I need is in a small success that we've only just had a few months ago. So this episode that we launched back in January really focuses on practical advice, and it's more than just a grand statement. It is a reflections and accomplishments letter. And I encourage you that whether you did one back with us in January or maybe you're starting just now, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Winning Through Culture.
I'm Tim Flanagan.
And I'm Amanda Kramer.
When culture's not a priority, people aren't a priority. Having an intentional focus helps you as a leader remain impactful and relevant as you move your business forward.
Welcome to Winning Through Culture. So, from a standpoint of what we want to cover on this particular episode, it's really just to set us up for success for Winning Through Culture for 2025. And I felt like leaning into the concept that we've talked about so many times before around core values would be a great way for us to jump right into this season that many people will be in as they begin January. So with this episode going out, we have the opportunity to lean into the reflection that many leaders, business owners take over the holiday period that we just came out of. And then ultimately, if you haven't done your business planning, that's the time and space in which you would think about doing that. And I have really appreciated over the last couple of weeks where we've been talking about some of the exercises that you do as a business owner, as a leader to help prepare yourself for the upcoming year. I thought it might be good for us to share at least one of those exercises. But when I think about that, it first comes from the core values. And so how you and I talk about core values on this podcast, I think is really cool. And the article that I sent you today was really something I had come across, and it just put it in a new perspective for me, because we often talk about core values, and there is a difference between what is a core value for an organization, what is an aspirational value for an organization, and then what is, for lack of a better way to say it, just permission to play. And so when we talk about core values, we talk about the things that exist today that is the filter for how we make all decisions. And I think that bleeds into really nicely into how people would do business planning. Yeah. So all of that to say is that's what I'm hoping to kind of talk through in our time together. What thoughts do you have?
I think that's great. I did not read the article. I will read the article.
I just pinged it to you, so yes, you're good.
I know. And no, but I think there's the whole adage that people will come up with core values that kind of sound nice on a plaque somewhere in a hallway. But the real issue is, what are those values and how are they actually modeled and lived every day by the leadership of the organization first, because the leadership really kind of sets the tone. And how do those core values become a driver for business growth and success, not just something that, again, is a exercise people thought they should do because somewhere in an article in a business magazine or publication or a book, they said you should have core values. And somebody said, okay, let's go. So, yeah, I think the key element of solid core values is something you can point to in your decision making, as you said, Amanda, and something that you can model. Something that you can correct if you get off track with those values. But I think they're great guide points to great decision making and, again, driving a successful business and culture.
Well, and the point that you made, right, about the fact that they need to be modeled. And we've discussed on this podcast so many times, like, how do you go about creating core values? How should those be integrated into the fabric of the organization that you have? And I think the first step, as you shared, is really that the leadership is modeling those values, that they truly are the filter in which decisions are made. And as we kind of progress into 2025, oftentimes you'll have a core value be integrity or some word like that comes up in the conversation of identifying how you put it into words. And I think oftentimes it's almost better to state what it is not versus what it is. And then that is the really determining factor of how you can see the behavior and how the core values align. But maybe just talk a little bit about, I know and we have previous podcasts that people can hop into and listen to about how we came up with our core values that we operate on a daily basis. But the one I think is always fun that we chat about, and it's a thread for us, is the fact that we were sitting around that table having that discussion. And one of them specifically came up that you were like, I think might have been more in that aspirational category for you as a leader at
was
the
for me
time.
at the time, yes.
Right. But it was a core value for me.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of talk through that one a little bit. I think it lends itself to explaining where that difference comes into play.
It's a story that if you weren't going to tell, I was going to tell. So
okay.
You can tell
well, good.
We are not scripting our podcast conversation today. I think the key thing for core value in business is how, as I said, are you going to use it to make decisions? How is it going to guide who you hire? How is it going to guide who is a fit for your team? And how is it going to make the people you serve better? Because every business has customers or clients and they serve those clients. And so the lens of those core values is important. And I know when this was 8 years ago now. Boy, that went by fast. But, we were integrating two relatively large organizations that had separate core values. And I knew as the leader, I said, all right, this meant something to both of these organizations independently. So we've got to bring the group of people that are going to lead this new organization together and revisit, why did you pick these? Why did we pick these? And not just say, okay, all of these core values are our new core values. But we went through a process with an outside facilitator who did a fantastic job. And the story that you are alluding to is one of the core values that we settled on, and you were a great proponent of, was balance. And I remember sitting in the meeting, and I was probably the oldest leader in the room. And I am thinking to myself, the last thing that I am a role model for in my career has been balance. I am full charge, full steam, all on, all the time. And I remember you very clearly articulating to me how important that was to you. And this was before you were even a mom. And many of the other people in the room were younger. And the conversation to me was very clear that this was a core value that meant something. And if I was going to have this group of leaders engaged in this new organization, I better embrace it. And as I distinctly remember, I told you, I said, we can go with this. I just have some work to do in order to model it.
Right.
Which is going back to my point I made earlier, which is as a leader, do not have a core value you're not committed to modeling. Or you basically are better off without having core values, because then you're just sending a very confused and conflicted message. Mm-hmm. And I can say
more disastrous. To state something that you can't live up to, so to speak,
or choose not to live up to, because then it appears both non-integral and duplicitous and disingenuous. So I embraced the core value of balance, as most of the room was extremely energized by that as one of the core values. I have gotten better at it. I'm not great, but I've definitely gotten better. I feel like I can model the behavior. And candidly, as I've told the story before, and you know this, Amanda, I probably never would have gotten better at it if we didn't take it as a core value and if I hadn't committed to trying to live a little bit better that way. And I got a better life for it. So, and certainly, again, it's an important part of many of the people who are part of organizations' affinity for the company.
Yeah, completely agree. And when we talk about like the difference between it being a core value, it is a filter in which we make decisions. And just coming out of the holiday season that everyone has experienced, that was a core value that we looked at. Okay, so what days are we as an organization investing in our people for them to invest in themselves and their families over that period of time? And every organization looks different, but it was a filter. We used it as an opportunity for us to say, this is a commonality. This is something we believe in. And ultimately, we're able to model and support, and letting that flow through the organization. And oftentimes, we don't even have to talk about it. That's the one. And again, we have 5 core values as an organization in our daily lives. Tim and I do. And there oftentimes you can just see the engagements or the interactions between, whether it be a staff person to a client of ours or between a client, a staff person. It doesn't matter what relationship there is there. These are the 5 things that even if you didn't know the words that we use to describe them, you would eventually get there because we can talk about what it is and what it isn't. And that is the really unique part about when you get so ingrained with your core values that it happens without you even really needing to put that much concentration around it. And I think that that's a cool thing to reflect on as many people are coming into the new year. And we've done a podcast before and we talk about people who make New Year's resolutions and all the things. And we don't have to go there. We all know my stance on that. However, I do feel that it's really important that if you have a core value that is, let's call it in the sense of like conviction or growth or whatever word you're using, that you are modeling exercises that help not only you as a leader and not necessarily just your organization, but every individual in your organization, the ability to exercise that core value as they model for their teammates and as they plan for the year ahead. And so now that we're sitting in 2025, I feel very convicted in an exercise that Tim shared with me that we want to share with all of you, because part of this podcast is for us to share with you what we learn day in and day out, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this really resonates in the good category. This is something that,
yes.
Yeah, this is something that you can take, you can do, even if you didn't take the time to sit down over the holidays, you still have you have a very ripe opportunity in front of you today. And this is something that you can reflect on as you go throughout the year. And we're going to encourage you to do that. So I'm going to kind of hop in and ask Tim to share what this exercise is, how it came to him and how he uses it as a leader for guiding our organization that we use as a model for this podcast. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can utilize this with the teams that you have as a business owner, a leader, an entrepreneur to really ensure some core value weaving throughout the year.
Yeah. So I'm going to describe what this idea is and how to put it into practice. And it's ironic we're talking about it. I learned 2 days ago that the mentor to me early in my early 20s that taught me this exercise passed away 2 weeks ago. And I was talking and I didn't even know he had passed away until Tuesday night. And I was having lunch with some advisors that also had been mentored by him. And we were singing his praises about what an amazing impact he had had in our lives. And this exercise was one of the things that everybody pointed to. So this mentor's name was Claude Dollins. He was a business coach to many people. He is the person that I attribute to having me read through my father, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's an exercise in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that is about writing your eulogy. That's not what this letter is. So let me be clear there. And this is not, as Amanda said, a New Year's resolution letter. So the exercise is writing a letter of accomplishments as if it were the end of, in this case, 2025. So you are writing a letter now. I have not written my letter, Amanda, because I'm going 110 miles an hour, but I am going to be doing that before the first of the year. And in that letter, I'm reflecting on what I actually achieved in 2025. I'm not writing a letter saying this is what I will achieve in 2025. I am writing the letter from the perspective of the fact that it has happened. So it's a reflection back. It's December 31st, 2025. I'm reflecting back, recanting everything that happened. So it's a really important distinction to this exercise. Because again, if you just say, oh, these are all the things I'm going to do in 2025, January rolls by and you forgot about it and it's over. But there's power, I promise you, in writing this from the perspective of this happened. And I've had people do this, and I always tell them, just put it somewhere where you can go and look. You don't even need to look at it through the course of the year, but at the end of next year, go back and read that letter and you'll be amazed at how much of what you wrote happened. So the things that you put in this letter are, I think, all personal, but I would say you write about what you accomplished in your business life, you write about what you accomplished in your relationships, write about what you accomplished from a health perspective, anything that's important to you. anything that you want to be reflective on, and in essence saying, hey, this is what happened in 2025. That's the purpose of this letter. It can be as long as you'd like. I would make it as detailed as possible. And again, you're describing what happened, not what you intend to do. So it's a little bit of a mind twister because you're writing the letter as if it already happened backwards, and then really summarizing what those things were in whatever writing style you have, whether it's on a computer, whether it's in a journal, whether it's on a yellow pad, whether it's all the above. And again, I would also encourage you to keep it somewhere safe. And you don't even necessarily need to read it throughout the course of the year, although it doesn't hurt. But certainly give yourself the opportunity to read it at the end of 2025 and see with amazement what actually did happen. And so that is the exercise. I promise you it is super powerful. And I would encourage everybody to do it because, again, it lets your mind really, everybody sets goals. Everybody has a plan. Everybody's got New Year's resolutions. But when you write something from the perspective of it has already happened, something inside your subconscious mind shifts and engages and moves you towards that over the course of the next year.
Yeah, I call it an accomplishments letter.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of people ask me when we've been talking about this, so what would it sound like? And I just drafted quickly like a sample opening for the letter just to kind of put it in perspective. And you would actually call out yourself, right? So if you're going to write this, I'll say, Dear Amanda, in this case, I'm going to say, I can hardly believe that it's the end of 2025. Looking back, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude and pride for everything that's been accomplished over this year. This year, I have, and then you would insert like what you aimed to be. I did what you aimed to have done. And I now have. So it's have, do, be, really just putting that into a contextual setting. And then outlining, as you just described, from a business perspective, a relational perspective, a health perspective, a spiritual standpoint, the ability to break it down and really write like what accomplishments that you had in 2025. And then summarizing and here's what made it possible. And as you shared, Tim, this really allows you to summarize what you anticipate to be your best year ever. And you're able to capture your actions, your decisions, and your mindset shifts that have made 2025 an outstanding year. And I know we started this podcast talking about core values, and you're going to see the core values that you have as an individual and also that you have instilled into the relationships that you have and ultimately the business that you're running or that you're a part of. They're going to come throughout without you even having the necessary need to sit down and put those words on paper, meaning instilling your core values into the words themselves. It's going to flow out without you even...
Well, the letter is certainly a reflection of what you value.
Correct. Very good way to put that.
Yeah, there's no question. If you're not sure what your core values are, write this letter, go through this exercise, and then read it immediately, and you'll know what you value, because what you ultimately write about is going to be a reflection of what you value.
Yeah. So it's honestly a practical exercise for setting meaningful goals and aligning, the actions with the vision that you have for the year ahead. It's something that you can do right now as we're sitting here, and it's an opportunity for you to really put into words. And we challenge you to do that. We challenge you to write your own accomplishments letter and reflect on the core values that will guide your success, both as an individual and also as a business leader and entrepreneur, and ultimately having that ability to share that. And Tim said, this came from a mentor relationship that he had, and we want to make sure that we're continuously providing you opportunities for that reflection. And you have this awesome chance to do it yourself, to encourage your teams to do it as well. Anyone really, from a personal perspective, that you feel this would be a benefit to.
Yes. And I would again echo, it was 36 years ago I got this idea. And I will admit there have been years that I did not do this exercise. And then at the end of the next year, I wish I had. So I will be doing this exercise this year for sure. And certainly given gratitude to Claude for teaching it to me and so many other people. And the gentleman I had lunch with this past week shared with me enthusiastically. They'll be sharing their letter with me, and I'll do the same. So encourage people to really embrace this idea. Again, it's not a resolution. It's not a goal. It's a, what did I actually accomplish looking back, and embrace the power of putting your subconscious mind in action and moving yourself towards the things that are really important to you, that you value and you want, and the person you want to be, and the things you want to do.
And again, just tying it together, because we've had so many conversations about core values, and people often struggle at times with, how do I put them into words? And I think this is a really great way, like as you said, to just write the letter.
Yeah, write
and
the
your
letter.
core values are going to come out.
Yep.
You can pull from it directly if you need to revisit them, if you need to really categorize them. Are they truly core values? Are they aspirational values? Or are they just permission to play? They're the baseline social norms that you're going to accept.
Yep.
So I think it's a great way for you to categorize them and see how they're being lived out by the leadership, not only from yourself, but those that are around you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture.
Until next time, stay intentional, be impactful,
Because your culture matters.